Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of Authority. I am E. Probilski. I am an author, editor, and book publisher, and I am really happy to be here with you this week. Those of you who cannot see me on video, if you hear me making any noises or if you hear any weird peeping or beeping or noises in the background, I currently have my parrot Daisy on my shoulder, and it is heading into mating season, so she is kind of obsessed with my ears. But if I put her down, she screams, and that is also not conducive to recording a podcast. So we're just gonna have to kind of power through and accept that this week's episode is going to be exciting. I wanted to talk about this week getting the most out of a writing group when you are working with one. Writing groups are powerful. They can be incredibly helpful to people, and they are one of the first things most writers hear when they're thinking about getting into this seriously is find a writing group. And that's a really important and valuable piece of advice. And I'm not going to argue with it at all, but one of the things I notice a lot is that people jump into these spaces and then don't really know how to behave in them. And that's a skill that I would very much like to share with all of you because I've been running online spaces since the 1990s, various different topics, everything from metaphysics to writing to different types of text-based role-playing communities, and while the etiquette amongst all of them is a little different, it's still similar. And also, my friend Leslie and I run two large groups on Facebook, the Neurodivergent Writers Lounge and the Neurodivergent Editors Lounge, and together they number a couple hundred people short of 10,000 people. So this is coming from somebody with a great deal of experience who's currently using that experience to run a very busy and active writing group. And I wanted to offer some insights to people who might be just looking at getting into writing groups or who are finding them not really work out well for them. So that's kind of where we're at today. So I want to just dig into that. The first piece of advice I have is to read the rules. You'd be kind of horrified to know just how many people get bounced out of writing groups almost immediately for not listening to rules. The rule that I see broken the most is the no promotion rule that we have. In the Neurodivergent Writers Lounge, we have it so that you can promote your books on one thread a week, and on a launch day for a project, you can share one post about your project. And this is to prevent the feed from getting entirely cluttered by people spamming. But people frequently ignore those, and it happens a lot. So the first thing I would say is please read the rules of the space you're in and see if you can adhere to those rules and behave appropriately when you're in those spaces. The second piece of advice I've got here is to approach the group with an open mind. One of the things that people usually approach a writing group for is you want to learn, right? You're there because you don't know everything. So you have to approach the group with the fact that you don't know everything at top of mind. And you need to remain teachable. That isn't to say you need to be bullied or incorporate feedback that doesn't work for you or your project, but go into a space open-minded and listening to what people have to say around you. And take into that advice and think about it. Don't apply anything that doesn't work, but at the very least, listen and think. That kind of leads into this next one where I'm saying don't ask for work from others and then dismiss it. There's a lot of times when people will request help in a writing group and then just ignore everything that's said or fight with everybody who gives feedback to them. And if you're asking for critique or information or trying to connect with people, dismissing all of the people's input and time is not a respectful thing because when somebody writes a comment, particularly if it's a longer one and they've obviously taken time to think about it, it's the respectful thing to say thank you for spending your time with me today. If somebody's being a jerk, obviously you don't need to say that to them, but if anybody's acting in good faith and trying to help, then respect that and appreciate it. And if you aren't going to use somebody's advice, don't tell them. You can just say, thank you for taking the time to give me feedback on this, I appreciate it. And you don't need to tell them that you're not going to do what they suggested because it doesn't help you. But just say thank you. And that sort of, you can see that this is turning into a flow here. Don't argue with the critique. No matter how inaccurate or unhelpful some critique you receive is, somebody's somebody's really trying their best to give you assistance. And they've taken time out of their day to provide you critique. And just as with the last one, if somebody's being a jerk, this obviously isn't about that. But thank the person for their time and move on. If the critique doesn't work for you, well, okay. But if you're remaining open and teachable, you don't want to argue with that critique. You can just say thank you and think about it and move on. Particularly if you have a lot of people providing the same feedback, then even if you don't see it, clearly there's something going on that other people see. And it has kind of become a problem. Don't take that feedback personally either. As a rule, people aren't trying to hurt you. Them saying something doesn't work or giving you, heavy critique, it hurts. It doesn't feel good. And I don't blame you for not feeling great about it. I mean, last week I talked about what it's like to deal with rejection and how that's going to make you feel and how to deal with that. But you need to understand that that feedback isn't personal. And being kind to people when they've taken the time to give you feedback is important. And if somebody is being a jerk, just like before, you can block them, you can report them to the group admins, you can hide their comments, whatever it is that you need to do for your mental health. Or just don't engage with it. But don't take the feedback as an attack on you. It's not. People are genuinely trying to help you and teach you, which is what you're in that space to do. The group ain't Google. I'm not saying don't ask questions, but usually you should come to a writing group having done some of the bare minimum work. One example I have is there is an individual in a writing space I'm in who chronically asks questions about history. Like, what would a Regency era person be wearing in this circumstance? And it's obvious that they haven't done any research on the time period and haven't done any studying into it, and they're just hoping somebody can give them the answer so they can just move on with their life. And unfortunately, that's not how writing in general works, and that's not what writing groups are for. It'll just anger people. And beyond that, a question about Regency era clothing in a writing group, they're lucky there actually is an expert. But a lot of the time there isn't, and you may or may not get the answers you need, so it's best to kind of do some, at least groundwork research on your own. Now, if you've done some research, or you don't even know where to start, those are both very reasonable things. And you can say, hey, I don't even know where to start with this. Can somebody help me out? Or, I've done as much as I can do, and I don't know where to find this information. Can somebody help me? Those are very fair things to ask. But don't just randomly launch questions at the group like they're a search engine, because they aren't. And it's not respectful of people's time and expertise and experience if you are just going to treat them in that way. It's not going to go well for you, and it's not going to feel great for them. On the other hand, you want to stay in your lane. If somebody's asking questions that have nothing to do with your area of expertise, don't weigh in unless you've got something meaningful to add to the conversation. For example, if somebody's talking about their romance novel and discussing certain ways characters fall in love, and your only feedback is, well, I don't like romance, I don't read romance, and this sounds boring, then maybe keep scrolling. If it's not something you know anything about, if it's not something you enjoy, if it's not something you can share insight on, don't step into other people's spaces, and particularly don't do it in a critical way, because if it's not meant for you and it wasn't yours, then maybe shutting your mouth is the best decision you could make. Opening mouth and inserting foot rarely results in you making friends and having a positive experience in a space. So usually it's just better not to answer or not to engage with something if you can't contribute something helpful, meaningful, or otherwise useful to them. Don't request critiques endlessly without giving critiques. Much as with the last one of the things about writing groups is that they are reciprocal spaces. You are all there to grow together. You are all there to learn together. And if you want something from somebody who's giving it to you for free, you should probably consider sharing that back to them. In that regard, if you are always asking for people for things and never give anything, imagine if you had a friend who came over to your house and was always asking to borrow money, but never gave you anything. They didn't so much as give you a birthday cake. They didn't so much as give you a card on your birthday. They gave you nothing, but were always asking for things from you. That would not be a good, healthy, positive relationship, right? I don't think anybody thinks it would be. And critique is the same way. If you don't, even if you don't feel like you know enough to critique, you can still read somebody's piece and say, well, this is what I took away from this. And if you don't have time to give critique, don't ask other people to give you their time in return. It doesn't need to be that you give the same person feedback who gave it to you. You might not be the right person for that. But make sure that you're giving back to the group. And if you aren't offering critique, maybe you can answer questions or other things. Like, make sure you're giving as much as you ask of people in those spaces. And if you don't have time to do any of that and you just want people to give you answers, well, in that case, hire somebody. Don't look for free help. Writers groups aren't your target audience. And I mean this in two ways. Writing groups are not places to market your book unless you are specifically invited to, like the weekly thread that I mentioned for the writers in my group. And also, writers and writing groups are trying to learn from one another and developing skills. They really aren't in that space to be marketed to. And even if there is some crossover and they might read your books, they probably aren't going to enjoy the experience of being marketed to in a space that they're there to learn in. In fact, it's just going to annoy people. Secondly, you may be receiving feedback from people who are not your audience. So if you are, say, writing this incredibly complex adult fantasy historical alt thing and you are attending a group with a bunch of YA writers, you're going to receive feedback designed for a YA audience, not for your audience. So not all the feedback might be super useful for you. And understand that if somebody isn't your target audience, they can only give you feedback in so many ways that are helpful unless they're a professional and have training. Not every group is for every person. There are a lot of focused writing groups that are composed of one type of group or another, like my Neurodivergent Writers Lounge. It's geared toward neurodivergent people. And some writing groups have specific cultures to them that may or may not jive with you. It's okay. That group may or may not be bad, but it might not be the space for you. And don't hang out in places that don't feel right for you. That's okay. Finally, I want to say that writing groups can be great experiences for people who are open to them and find groups of people to jive with. You can make lifelong friends. I have made lifelong friends in writing groups. And they can be places where you develop community and learn tremendous amounts about the craft. And learning this etiquette helps you fit into those spaces better and really leverage them to your advantage rather than staying on the outskirts. And when all else fails, remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Being kind, honest, genuine, and appreciative is almost never going to lead you wrong. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to coming back with you next week. We will be talking to Angela, and I'm super excited to have you hear what Angela from the Autistic Culture podcast has to say. Take care, and bye.